Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we'll be explaining the role of each piece in Xiangqi by comparing them to their chess counterparts. Though not every piece in Xiangqi has a direct equivalent in chess, this video should help you get a better sense of how each Xiangqi piece works and learn how to reorganize your chess brain so that it can work in Xiangqi as well. Before we look at each piece individually, let's look at it broadly. In chess, there are no strictly offensive or defensive pieces. A bishop, knight, rook, or queen can move freely around the board, acting as either offense or defense. In Xiangqi, however, the general and advisors are confined to the palace, and the elephants are confined to their side of the board, making them more defensive, while the other pieces, chariots, cannons, and horses, can be used for both offense and defense. With that out of the way, let's look at each piece. 1. The soldier, which is most like the pawn. There are fewer soldiers in Xiangqi than there are pawns in chess, and there are gaps between each soldier. Additionally, soldiers cannot move more than a single square, and they capture in the direction that they move. This leads to a couple of differences in the opening. First, the soldier does not initially impede the movement of our more powerful pieces, and second, that building a pawn chain is not possible on your own side of the board, making the pawn structure weaker overall. We could talk all day about openings in Xiangqi. If you would like us to take a deeper dive into openings, let us know by leaving a comment below. For now, let's move on. The differences in how the soldiers act affect their role and potential threat. Namely, when the soldier crosses the river, they can move and capture left and right, in addition to their default forward motion, but not backwards. This means that building a pawn chain can only come after the soldiers have crossed the river, and they can begin interlocking and protecting each other. Importantly, while they get more powerful once they cross the river, soldiers cannot promote when they reach the enemy's back line. This means that the soldier is both somewhat more flexible than a pawn due to its additional options after it crosses the river, but it also has less potential energy. Your opponent never has to worry about a piece promoting, or even the threat of a promotion, which makes a huge difference in the lines that a player must consider, especially at later stages in the game. 2. The chariot, which is most similar to the rook in chess. In the absence of a queen equivalent, the chariot is the most powerful piece on the Xiangqi board. You should treat your chariots almost like queens. Like the queen, developing your most powerful piece can be a great asset, but can also be a hindrance as a chariot can be easily attacked and forced to move out of a threat. An important step in the development of your board in international chess is castling, which is not possible in Xiangqi. Because of the importance of castling and the prerequisite moves required to enable this option, it often turns out that rooks end up being developed slower than other pieces. Chariots, in contrast, are often activated much earlier relative to their chess counterparts. An additional factor that results in chariots being developed faster is the presence of designated defensive pieces. Because there are 4 defensive pieces that cannot cross the river, the chariot becomes relatively more valuable as an attacking piece. Like the rook, however, the chariot becomes more powerful in the endgame as the board becomes more open and it can move around more freely. 3. The horse, which is most similar to the knight. The horse and knight are obvious counterparts since they move similarly and capture the same way. They are both short-ranged pieces, and they are especially useful for forking opponent pieces. Like the knight, the horse will often find itself protecting central soldiers in the opening of a game. Also, like chess knights, Xiangqi horses are strong, flexible pieces and are generally developed earlier rather than later. However, there are still some differences we need to pay attention to. Instead of jumping to its square like the knight in chess, the Xiangqi horse moves one space orthogonally and then one space diagonally. And unlike the knight, the horse can have its movements blocked by intervening pieces. This limited movement has several consequences for the horse. 1. It is less flexible than its chess counterpart. 2. It can be trapped more easily and thus is weaker in crowded positions. 3. It is more powerful in endgames than in early stages because it can then move around more freely. In Xiangqi, it is important to create space for the horses to move around. The most common play in the opening moves is to try to have the soldier above the horse move forward. usually d3e3 or d7e7, so the horse can move c3e4, c3e2, c7e6, or c7e8. 4. The elephant, which is most like the bishop. Both pieces move diagonally. However, unlike a bishop, which can fully reach across the length of the chessboard, the Xiangqi elephant is much more limited. The elephants cannot cross the river, can only move diagonally 2 positions at a time, and can have their movement blocked by intervening pieces. The elephants can only occupy 7 distinct positions on their side of the board, whereas the bishops operate on opposite colors, covering the whole board together. These factors end up making the elephant a weaker version of its counterpart, and only a defensive piece in Xiangqi, whereas the bishop can flexibly pivot between offense and defense. Most commonly, similar to chess-bishop pairs, the elephants are used in tandem with each other. You will often see one elephant in front of the general and the other to the side, providing a defense against attacks aimed at the center of the board, especially against cannons. However, they can also be used in other creative ways, such as acting as a piece for your cannon to jump over, which can be useful in the endgame when pieces are in short supply, or blocking the movement of an opponent's horse. 5. The advisor. The advisor, like the elephant, is mostly a defensive piece. It can be most likened to either a pawn or bishop. The advisor resembles a pawn in its ability to move only one space at a time, and resembles a bishop in its diagonal movement and capturing. Much like the elephant, which can only move diagonally and can only occupy 7 points on the board, the advisors can only move diagonally 1 position at a time within the palace, and can only occupy 5 total positions. It is mostly used in blocking the movement of attacking pieces. In this example, the placement of the advisor prevents the horse from checking the general. To the chess player, the rather lean capabilities of the advisors and elephants may seem limiting, but this is just part of the reason why Xiangqi and chess are so wonderfully different. 6. The general and its chess equivalent, the king. The all-important general is restricted to moving orthogonally within the palace in Xiangqi, making it much less powerful than its chess equivalent. The king in chess, though not especially powerful, unlike the general, it can reposition itself, which is very important in many endgame positions. Despite having very limited movement, the general has great offensive capabilities, especially in the endgame. This is because of the flying general rule, which prevents the 2 opposing Xiangqi generals from facing each other without any pieces in between. The general can oftentimes be used to restrict your opponent's general's movement, leading to checkmate. So in fact, like the king, which is considered more powerful in the chess endgame, the general is similarly powerful in the Xiangqi endgame, though through different means. 7. The cannon. We've saved the most unique piece for last. The cannon, which has no direct chess equivalent. We don't want to leave you with nothing, however, so we'll be comparing it very loosely to the knight. Like the knight, it is the only piece that can jump over other pieces. Since it requires another piece to be present in order to capture, it is almost strictly less powerful towards the end of the game, when there is less material to utilize. This is also loosely comparable to the knight, which gains some of its power from being able to jump over other pieces. In closed positions, the knight can access spaces that other pieces cannot, while spaces are more accessible by all pieces, not just the knight in open positions, which are generally more common in the later stages of the game. And like the knight, the cannon is often among the first pieces moved. The most common opener is moving a cannon to the center of the board, where it threatens the opponent's central pawn right out of the gate. However, in the end, it is important to reiterate that the cannon has no real equivalent in chess, and while recognizing these similarities may be helpful, the cannon is not actually like the knight at all in many other ways. We are drawing these comparisons because a chess player beginning to play Xiangqi may find it helpful to think of the cannon in this way initially, but as you become more advanced, this analogy may not hold as well. So, that wraps up all the pieces. We hope this basic rundown was helpful, though we remind you that this is just a primer. As you play and learn more about Xiangqi, you will learn the intricacies of each piece in more detail than a 10-minute video could ever teach you. That being said, if you think we missed any important things, please leave a comment. Also, if you have the chance, please come visit us on Xiangqi.com. We're always working to improve on our content and interact with the community. We'd love to play a game of Chinese chess with you. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.